And welcome to Fireside Chats, coming to you from the beautiful state of Jefferson, located near the foothills of Northern California. Welcome. A state of mind, if not a state in fact. A place where common sense prevails and... Hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties. There we go. A place where common sense prevails, people work hard, and it's all about what you can do, not whatever intersectionality you fit into. So today we're going to talk about another egregious example of a cyberbully, whackadoodle, and nutjob. A woman named Parker Mankey recently made the news by attacking a man wearing a MAGA hat amongst the slurs hurled at this wonderful elderly gentleman who was retired and just enjoying a coffee at Starbucks in beautiful Palo Alto. Among the epithets hurled at this man was being tarred as being a Nazi. And so this kindly elderly man who was cyberbullied removed the MAGA hat to show that he was wearing a yarmulke and indeed was not a Nazi. So let's go ahead and look at this article from Palo Alto Online by Sue Dremin, and let's see what this story is all about. Article starts. In the latest example of social media-fueled extremism, a heated confrontation over politics and a Palo Alto Starbucks on Monday has gone viral nationwide, leading to reported death threats and also calls for greater dialogue and empathy. So I'm for the latter and not for the former. No death threats. Yes, greater dialogue and empathy. Continuing. It began when Palo Alto resident Rebecca Parker Mankey attempted to shame an elderly white man wearing a red Make America Great Again hat as he sat in the coffee house. An encounter she later wrote about on social media. We'll be posting that when I'm done. Continuing. Calling him, quote, a hater of brown people, end quote, Mankey said she yelled at him and addressed Starbucks customers and employees to join her in her effort. She said she left the store, but soon returned and continued to yell at him. Mankey said she was, quote, heartbroken, end quote, that the other white people didn't stand up against the man sporting a slogan that was popularized by Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign. She followed him out of the store to the parking lot, where she continued to berate and swear at him. Sounds like a real peach, doesn't she? Continuing. She called the man, quote, Nazi scum, end quote, and threatened to post pictures of him on social media, which she then did. Along with her version of the incident on her Facebook page and on Twitter, she asked the public for help finding him. Quote, I want him to have nowhere to hide, end quote, she wrote. A practice called doxing, or posting personal contact information to encourage threats and harassment. Yikes. Continuing. The incident has had repercussions not only for Mankey, who said on Tuesday she's received death threats, well, no shit, you dummy, and was fired from her job as an accountant, but also for her former employer, Griffin Stringed Instruments. Staff at the store said they were inundated with angry phone calls and emails Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to pause here because if you've listened to my very first webcast, Cyberbullies, Whackadoodles, and Nutjobs, I've been the subject of doxing, and I've been the subject of targeted harassment, and I have been the target of death threats. So I don't think anyone should do that to anyone. However, an out-of-context social media post versus being the recipient of the very activities that you're calling for. Some might say that that's karma, but let's continue. Meanwhile, the 74-year-old Palo Alto man in the MAGA hat, who is Jewish, told the Palo Alto Weekly that he is not afraid of the woman. Rather, he said, her actions are an example of the lack of discourse in the country over differing viewpoints. He said he has seen her description of the incident and that it was accurate. And they're withholding his name, as they should, because they don't want him to get whatever. I'm just going to pause here again, because if you see the picture of her right now on screen, that is Parker Mankey. And, it kind of reminds me of, there was this B movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme in the 80s called Cyborg. Does she not kind of look like the Cyborg? And kind of the general dystopian future portrayed in Cyborg. I think it really sums it up with Parker Mankey here. Continuing, Mankey, who is an appointed member of Palo Alto's Northern Ventura Coordinated Area Plan Working Group and co-chairs the Bay Shore Progressive Democrats, a relatively new progressive club addressing social justice issues, exhorted people to confront the man if they see him wearing the red cap. Quote, "You do not want to be the person who didn't speak up when we slipped into fascism," she posted. I'm just going to pause here. Parker Mankey, if you're listening, that is fascism. What you are doing, harassing people, taking away their speech, calling for targeted harassment, these are the things that the Nazis did on their rise to power, you stupid idiot. Continuing. On Twitter, she said, "I am going to publicly shame him in town and try and get him fired and kicked out of every club he is in. I am going to go to his house, march up and down carrying a sign that says he hates black people. I am going to organize protests where he works and make him feel as unsafe as he made every brown person he met today." End quote. So, I'm just going to pause. Do we see some problems here? Do we see some problems with the mindset of this person? First of all, she's a coward. She didn't talk to him. She didn't say, "Wow, isn't the MAGA hat representative of racism and fearful and invokes fear in brown people?" She didn't do that. She made an assumption. She made a leap of logic, or rather illogic, that led to other leaps of illogic, and continued down a rabbit hole of insanity. That really is the problem. So, looking at someone, an elderly Jewish man, and seeing a Nazi, I would say, is quite a leap. If, there certainly are a few whackadoodles on the right, for sure. I think Charlottesville demonstrated that. But make no mistake, that was a few. And also, the MAGA hat, being equivalent of KKK, is like saying that apple cider is going to turn someone into an alcoholic. Really, that's like going to the emergency room for it's like going to the emergency room for a paper cut. It's overkill. And she is a coward, of course, because if she was really interested in going after Nazis, she would do what I'm going off on a tangent here, But before I continue the article, I'm just going to finish my point. And my point is that these people today are cowards. If you live in the state of California and you live in a very liberal city and you're attacking people, tarring people, right-wing people, and attacking them, you are a coward and a bully. Contrast that with the Freedom Riders of the 60s. I had a teacher, my 6th grade teacher was a former Freedom Rider. She's a white woman. She was very short, 5'4". She's from Chicago. And in the 60s, she participated in freedom rides. So, if you want to combat racism and fascism, don't be a coward. Why don't you go down to Alabama and Mississippi, if you're serious about it, and combat it there, where there is racism, there is a need for it. I've had several black friends from the South, those states I just described, and I've heard some pretty horrific stories about what happened to them. So it seems to me that that is where there's a need for social justice warriors, if you're serious about it, not bullying and harassing a minority in your community. So, continuing. The postings drew criticism on right-wing and other websites, with comments coming from far away. A woman from the Midwest with the Twitter handle @RightHookYou responded by contacting, @RightHookUSA, responded by contacting Mankey's husband's employer and the Palo Alto Police Department. Quote, "I was extremely disturbed when I learned that an elderly man was being humiliated and harassed in public by a vicious bully." Amen, lady. End quote. The woman named Amy said in an email to the Weekly, quote, "I hope and pray that this incident leads to greater tolerance and respect among all Americans instead of greater hatred and rage." End quote. Amen. I'm not religious, but I thought I'd give a witness or whatever they call it. She declined to provide her last name because she said she received hateful messages for supporting the man. I don't doubt it. Continuing. Matt Lynch, a retail manager at Griffin Stringed Instruments, said the store has also been caught up in the politically fueled maelstrom. The business received many emails and phone calls Monday and Tuesday about Mankey's comments. People from all over the world have been posting negative Yelp reviews about the store. People who have never been customers, he's added. So I'm going to pause here. I've had that happen to my business. And here's the thing. A self-employed person or a person running a business, that is their life. Don't fuck with someone's business. If you haven't used the service, don't fuck with the business. I had people that were, in my case, in cyberbullies, whackadoodles, and nut jobs, I had, so I'll give you a little bit of background. There was a time when I had been assisting people that were upside down in their houses, getting out of it, and talking to the banks. One of my African-American colleagues said, "Hey, I've got this friend that went to this nonprofit organization that is well known for helping African-American people, but I'm not going to name it here. And what they're telling them doesn't sound right, and it doesn't sound anything like what you've been able to get for your clients, so I want you to talk to them." So I talked to them, and I looked at the paperwork, and I went to this nonprofit organization, and you couldn't see from one end to the other through all the weed smoke, first of all. And they seemed kind and nice and like nice people, but the things that they were having them do would be a large bank's wet dream. And so I got them out of there, and I got them a much, much better scenario. But I was attacked for that, and then I relayed that story. I said, "Look, I'm not a racist and I'm not a Nazi. I mean, this is what happened. I helped these people. I was referred by an African-American colleague to an African-American client, helped them out. This is what this nonprofit was doing. Oh, well, they're a nonprofit and you're doing it for profit. And I'm just like, these people are clueless because they don't understand that a nonprofit, if they did some rudimentary digging into the nonprofit, they would see that the nonprofits a lot of times are slush funds for politicians, giving their mistresses jobs. In this case, the banks were contributing to these nonprofits so that they would provide exactly the kind of service I described. I said, look, I don't get paid. I didn't get paid until it got done. And if it didn't get done, I didn't get paid. So, but these whackadoodles, they don't want to hear it. They just want to get on their high horse, and they want to, they just want to wear blinders, and they want to look cool for their friends, and that's fine. But continuing, quote, "It's been a tough day," he said, end quote. What she said, quote, "What she said in no way reflects Griffin or how the company feels." He added that 100% of the calls have been against what Mankey said. I would hope so. Continuing. Mankey had worked for the company for 4 years. That's quite a long time. She is no longer employed there, he said. Quote, "It's a big shock to us," end quote, he said. In a statement posted on the Griffin Facebook page, the company said, quote, "Griffin does not believe anyone should be harassed or subjected to hate speech, no matter what their beliefs. Music has historically been something that has brought people of diverse socio-political backgrounds together." Yes! Absolutely correct. Quote, "We'd like to make clear that the opinions expressed and the actions taken by the employee are not indicative of how we conduct ourselves at the shop, and hope that we can continue to serve our customers across the country, respectively, and universally, as we have done for nearly 50 years. So, please don't call or harass this music store." They get it. Continuing. So, heading, still exercising his free speech. The man in the MAGA hat told Weekly that he goes to Starbucks every day when Mankey, whom he did not know, approached him and began questioning him about his hat. He thought she was going to talk to him about politics, a common occurrence, but instead she lit into him right away. He said he was not really cognizant that she had called him, quote, "a hater of brown people," end quote, or that she likened him to a Nazi. She was, quote, "raving," end quote, he said, and he wasn't focused on her words. She told him she wanted him to call the police because then she would learn his name and where he lived, his wife's name, and where his children had attended school, her Facebook post states. And I will be putting the Facebook post up in just a moment. God, this woman is just unhinged. What a fucking nut job. He was surprised that no one said anything to stop the woman or come to his aid. Quote, "It would have been touching," end quote, he said. He wears the MAGA hat regularly, he said, but he never sees anyone else wearing one. Almost everyone who approaches him tells him they want to wear the hats, but are worried about the repercussions. And just to stop here, and these are the repercussions. There are cyberbullies, whackadoodles, and nutjobs that go down the slippery slope of insanity and think that a baseball cap is akin to attending Klan meetings and like murdering black people. That, in her own words, this unhinged, this whackadoodle nutjob, this is exactly her point of view. She's not being shy about it, people. This is exactly what she believes. And she's putting it out there for the whole world to see. And God bless this elderly Jewish man, because he's probably retired, so he's not going to, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, maybe at some point in a dystopian future, you might have to where they can take your Social Security away for speech that's not sanctioned. But for people that have to work, or people that have businesses, like the backlash that happened to Griffin Stringed Instruments here, her employer, it can be quite severe. So why borrow the trouble? Continuing. Quote, there's a fear in the air, end quote, he said of people who support Trump. I hope this doesn't start a trend of people getting in your face, end quote. He denied that the hat, which for some people has come to symbolize hatred, racism, and division, represents those ideas. Quote, let me ask you, the phrase, make America great, is there anything negative in it? In the 1952 election, people wore I like Ike buttons, but no one saw that as a threat, he said. Quote, saying that a hat is pro-Trump or pro-American is absurd. There has always been a picture of the president and the postmaster in the post office. Are we saying now that putting a picture of the president up is considered a provocation? What's happened around here is that people get the idea that if you're for Trump, you're an evil person, end quote, he said. He bemoaned the loss of civil discourse over politics, and no one has approached him to have a reasonable debate. There is no intelligent debate. People watch right-wing websites and left-wing websites, he said of people gravitating towards extremes. There's no intelligent discussion at all. There used to be some sense of two political parties. He said that he would continue to wear his MAGA hat in public as an exercise of his freedom of speech. Quote, until North Korea or other totalitarian regime takes over our government, end quote. And he will continue to go out for his coffee. I'm joking, he said, but I hope the next time at Starbucks there will be 30 people wearing red MAGA hats, and like in the movies, they'll give me a slow clap. I hope so too. So, yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. I'm a libertarian, and I'm perceived what is extremely left on social issues, and I've pissed off people on the right over that. But they don't personally attack me over it. And I've criticized Obama in the past, and I've criticized Obama over policy issues. And I was attacked by people on the left personally, in exactly the manner this woman is attacking this person. I'm not and so the fear and the criticism of people on the right is that people on the left are mobs. And certainly people like Parker Mankey are doing nothing to dispel this notion. Continuing. Heading, triggered by Trump. Mankey said, hold on. Mankey said in an email that she and her family are receiving death threats and other threats of harm. She declined to comment further. Well, welcome to my world, Parker Mankey. It's not really a lot of fun, is it? It's not fun receiving death threats for 2 days. It's not fun having people one-star your business. You know, when it happened to me, I lost $30,000 in business. So I'm sure that's probably what you make in an entire year. But for me, I was wanting to buy a new car and I had to buy a used car. So, hey, that's life. Continuing. Margaret Okazumi, who co-chairs the Bayshore Progressive Democrats with Mankey, expressed concern for Mankey and her family, saying they were doxxed Tuesday on right-wing social media and internet channels. So, doxing is when you post someone's personal information, their address, their phone number, their workplace. So, here's the thing. Mankey was calling for exactly this behavior to be directed at this elderly 74-year-old Jewish man. She was calling for this exact same behavior to be directed at him. And it's now happening to her. So some would call this social media justice. Continuing. In a statement from the organization, Okazumi said, "We live in highly polarized times due to nearly unprecedented levels of economic inequality and the struggles of many to obtain the basic necessities of life, such as housing or health care. The President of the U.S. has contributed to an atmosphere that encourages open hatred and scapegoating of brown people for this structural inequality." causing many to live in fear. Is that what he did? I thought he mentioned something about concrete policy initiatives like trade. And he delivered on a concrete policy initiative like trade. It was funny, when Obama was in office and the Wisconsin teachers went on strike, Obama didn't show up in Wisconsin and say, I'm for the working person and I'm for the right to organize. He was kind of MIA, wasn't he? Continuing, Parker felt strongly that she wanted to use her privilege as a white woman to stand up for those who are living in fear because of the hateful atmosphere fostered by Trump. Unfortunately, the manner in which she chose to stand up against a slogan that stands for racism led to an even stronger hateful response that has endangered her and her family. Is that what happened? Privilege as a white woman? See, here's the thing. I would love to know how many genuine friends that Parker Mankey has that are Latino or black. Looking at her, I'm not thinking that she doesn't have any lesbian friends, but it's just my own supposition there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have lots of lesbian and gay friends, so who cares? But anyway, does anybody actually think that she has genuine, real connection, go out, get a beer, hang out, and go to a barbecue, has actual minority friends? I mean, I'm just asking the question here because, I mean, I've been to, I've got friends of all backgrounds, and I've been to Latino barbecues, and let me tell you something, they really know how to throw a barbecue. And just a little side note here, if you ever get invited to a Latino barbecue, do this. Pick up a 6-pack of Guinness Stout and put it next to the Coronas, and just sit back and watch, because it's pretty hilarious when somebody wants to try one of those beers. Continuing. She added that the organization encourages nonviolent engagement to change the minds of racists. Parker's actions did not follow these principles and do not reflect our organization's political philosophy and approach. We regret how her actions have further reverberated and sundered human connection in the community at large, and we condemn those that have threatened her and her family with bodily harm. Okay, so this wackadoodle, nutjob, dumbfuck, dipshit organization that she was a part of that encourages social justice is basically saying that these people are racist, and that the people that have threatened her after she threatened this elderly Jewish man are the people that are the Nazis and the wackos. But she's the one that called for the doxing and the violence against this elderly Jewish man. What's that Malcolm X quote? It's the chickens coming home to roost. Oh, wait, he actually said that about JFK. Well, that was insensitive, but for Parker Mankey, it's true. So, if you want to change, and here's the thing, these people are cowards. If they are serious about changing the minds of racists, then, and they're not. They're bullies, and they want an excuse to bully people. Because if they were serious about it, these people would hop on a bus and go down to Mississippi or Alabama, and they would try and change the minds of racists down there. But they're not. They're cowards. They're a large majority. They know they're a large majority. And I think they get off on it. I think they get off on it the way Chris Burrows got off on getting meth rocks shoved up his ass. I think it's a sexual thing for them. I think that they get high off of it. I think they get high off of bullying people. Continuing. We call upon community members to learn from this incident, to study the principles of nonviolent resistance, and teach the ways to call attention to injustice while also encouraging reconciliation. Is the only way that we will ultimately succeeding in creating a world that works for everyone. Okay, well, I mean, your other 3 sentences didn't say that, but, you got to put it in there. Update. On April 3rd, Mankey resigned as co-chair, officer, and member of the Bay Shore Progressive Democrats. Stephen Lee, who serves on the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission, what the fuck is that, knows Mankey, calling her, quote, beloved by many in our community for her progressive activism, myself included. Yeah. Barf. However, he said he does not condone Mankey's behavior towards the man and believes it was completely unacceptable and that, quote, we can and must do better, end quote. I'm sure this guy fired up a big old doobie before he did this interview. In an email expressing his own opinion and not that of the commission, he recalled former First Lady Michelle Obama's warning not to be dragged into the mud of bad behavior. We've got to go high, Obama said. This week in Palo Alto, Lee said one of our neighbors allowed herself to be pulled down into the muck when she encountered a man wearing a MAGA hat at a Palo Alto Starbucks and chased him out of the store. Let me be clear, the MAGA hat at its best represents a distorted and inaccurate view of America, its history, and its place in the world, and at worst, it's a symbol of hate and everything that is wrong with America today. Is it? Continuing. But he added, we must resist sinking down to their level. We must hold out our hand and help pull them out of the muck. What is their level? Because what is their level? People that want a smaller government? People that want everyone to carry their own water? What, and see, here's the thing. The mindset of these people doesn't even allow for that debate to happen. These cowards will run off with their own prejudice and not engage these people. They're not interested in pulling out of the muck. They're interested in throwing the muck. Continuing. He added that people must be both vigilant and civil. Quote, this is the hardest, most courageous form of resistance. The resistance of Gandhi, of Dr. King, a resistance based on empathy committed not to a duel between our lesser demons, but rather a meeting of our better angels. That is the resistance we must strive for, and the one I know we have within us. When asked for comment Tuesday, the manager of the Starbucks refused to speak with a reporter. Who can blame them? In regards to whether Mankey would remain on the North Ventura Coordinated Area Plan Working Group, City of Palo Alto spokeswoman Claudia Keith responded in an email, quote, we are aware of the incident, but we don't have any comment at this point. So, reading between the lines, and that's the end of the article, reading between the lines, they're saying, yeah, it'll blow over. We love Parker Mankey. We love her radicalism. And what that says to me is that they want to see if it'll blow over so they can keep people like Parker Mankey around. So let's take a look here at her social media post. Here it is. Anybody in Palo Alto know this freak? He was sitting in Starbucks. I think he lives in Palo Alto. He will never forget me and will think seriously about wearing that hat in my town ever again. If you see him in this hat, please confront him. You do not want to be the person who didn't speak up as we slipped into fascism. Except that she's slipping us into fascism. I yelled at him, called the entire Starbucks to order, and yelled at him more about how it is not okay to hate brown people. Okay. He threatened to call the cops. I left after yelling at him some more. When I walked back by after picking up my lunch, he was still there. I went back in and yelled that I had changed my mind and wanted him to call the police, and I wanted to know his name, where he lived, his wife's name, and where his kids went to school. What the fuck? I called him more names and told him to call the police. Then I yelled, asked someone else at Starbucks to call the police. He wouldn't call the police, so I called him a wimp. She's calling him a wimp? He got his stuff together to leave. I followed him to the register while he complained about me, then chased him out of the Starbucks yelling at him to get the fuck out of my town and never come back. At one point, he tried to trip me up by asking me if I lived in Palo Alto. It wasn't me expecting to say that I was Palo Alto born and bred. Plus or minus total irrelevance. Continuing. I think he lives in Palo Alto. Please, please send me a DM if you see him anywhere. The part that was really heartbreaking to me was that in a full Starbucks, I was the only person yelling at him. There were other white people that really should have called him out. It's the duty of every white person in America to stand up every time they see it. Don't be the person who does nothing to protect our brothers and sisters from this hatred. It's not okay. So, yep. So, is Parker Mankey mentally ill, or is she just really passionate about her beliefs? That's all I've got to say about Parker Mankey, Whackadoodle, from the beautiful state of Jefferson, near the foothills of Northern California. A state of mind, if not a state in fact. This has been Fireside Chats. See ya.